Thank you. Let's welcome to tonight's commission, where predominantly we are focusing on the budget. I'd like to welcome all of the Cabinet members and officers to tonight's meeting. First of all, do we have any apologies?
Chair, we do not have any apologies, but we have Councillor Eggleston and Councillor Penfold joining us online.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any comments from the meeting of the 4th of December 2025? So as there are no comments, I move the minutes to be accepted and request a seconder. Councillor Eberle, thank you very much. If we can now, if everyone is content to vote, let me know. I'd say that is unanimous. Thank you very much. The minutes have been accepted. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest and anyone working under the party whip. Does anyone in the room wish to declare an interest or note they are working under the party whip? So there's no one here. Thank you. That's excellent. Let's move now on to agenda item 4, urgent items of business. Are there any urgent items of business?
None notified, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, public participation. Have we, public participation, agenda item 5, have we received any requests under the public participation scheme?
I'm not aware of any public participation scheme requests, Chair.
Thank you. Now moving on to the substantive part of the agenda. Agenda item 6, which is budget proposals 26-27. I'd like to welcome the Cabinet Member for Economic Development and Regeneration, Councillor Bidwell, and Executive Director Resources, Stuart McKellar. And I would just like to ask them to introduce and present the draft capital and revenue budget proposals.
Thank you, Chair, and Finance, by the way. Good evening. Tonight we present the Overview and Scrutiny Committee our capital and revenue budget proposals for the coming 26-27 financial year. You had the report presented to Cabinet on the 16th of December with the key figures for both capital, 12.8 million, and revenue, 136.5 million budgets. This year has been a more complicated budget setting process than for previous years, as the government has moved to a 3-year budgeting cycle rather than one. The rather ironic fair funding review leaves Bracknell Forest with challenges for the coming years, and although we have been able to come to a balanced position for the coming financial year, keeping essential services to meet residents' expectations, the future, it's easy enough for me to say, isn't it? The future years will be tough with difficult decisions to be made. However, we have been working to initiate a variety of initiatives and strategies to help the Council and residents to work as one to deliver excellent services and continue to make Bracknell an excellent place for families to work and play. Some of these initiatives would include Investor Save Fund, infrastructure upgrades, community and leisure enhancements, school and social care investments, town centre regeneration. This all goes to help process essential services, and we will be looking at also essential savings and service redesign. Following the Cabinet budget reports, the MHCLG has confirmed funding allocations which are in line with our proposed budget, albeit we are still waiting for the outcome of the government's business rates review. Tough times. I'll take questions later, but I'd like to now hand over to Stuart McKellar, who will present our budget update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bedwell. Good evening, councillors. So I have prepared a presentation which was prepared slightly in advance of the meeting, but it is on the screen. So I will go through it. Please feel free to stop and ask for any points of clarification at any time during the presentation. So what it sets out is the result of the provisional finance settlement compared with what our expectations were, what that means for our budget. And given the future position going ahead, I thought members might want to understand a little bit more about exceptional financial support. I don't think it's an immediate issue for Brighton Forest to have to be concerned about, but it is not an impossibility that we'll get there at some point in the years ahead. So can we move to the next slide, please, Sharon? So Commissioners will hopefully remember this slide from the meeting that we had in November. So it sets out from the 24-25 financial settlement that we would have a £7 million increase into 25-26. We've had that, but then for various reasons, due to reductions in specific grants, reductions in business rates retained income, we would see our resources significantly decrease. Were that not for compensating increases in general grant and an expectation that councillors will agree to an increase of 4.99% in the council tax going ahead. So all of those together mean that for the next 3 years, what we were expecting was pretty much a cash flat settlement over the next few years. So an increase in core spending power, that's a combination of grant and council tax income of less than 1% was our expectation over the next 3 years. So not a significant increase. If we move on now, please, Sharon. So what we have seen through the finance settlement is confirmation of that. I've put a very large arrow on this slide because without the large arrow, it's impossible to see the scale of the increase in Brighton Forest's core spending power over the next few years. It is a minuscule 0.2% increase, and that equates to £223,000. And through a conversation with my executive director for People colleague a few minutes ago, that was reminded that's less than the cost of supporting one individual of our high cost packages that we have. So that's the scale of the total increase Brighton Forest will receive over the next 3 years. And that assumes that council tax will be increased by 4.99%. If that isn't the case, then we will see an actual reduction in resources from grant of £18 million in the next 3 years. So a very, very difficult settlement for us. It's the worst settlement outside of inner London, and Brighton Forest is the only unitary authority in the country who will be receiving a floor funding grant to get us up to the level of the floor. So our actual ongoing core settlement is even worse than this. Moving on, thank you. So in introducing the new settlement, the government introduced some transition arrangements. The idea was they would gradually move towards the new funding allocations over 3 years. So what I was expecting is we'd be on the 100% income protection, so the same amount of funding over the next few years, and that is where Brighton Forest will be, according to the provisional settlement. We're certainly not in the situation where some of the more deprived areas in the country who are in receipt of recovery grant will be receiving guaranteed increases of 5, 6, 7% per year over the next few years. But equally, we're not quite, although we're very close to the position of our neighbour in RBWM and a number of London boroughs who will see a grant reduction, actually, is the best that they're going to hope for over the next few years. So that's going to apply to all councils who will see a more than 15% change in their funding allocations through the new system. Brighton Forest will see a 14% change, so we're very, very close to being at 95% position. So not a great settlement at all for Brighton Forest. And as a result of having the floor funding grant, that means that we will get to the end of the settlement with still in receipt of best part of £3 million of funding to get us to the floor. What happens in the settlement beyond that is currently unclear. So, but we will be starting from a position where we are being propped up to receive a level of grant that's actually above what our fair funding allocation is calculated to be. Chair, would you like to pause for a question?
I wasn't sure if you wanted questions now or at the end.
I'm very happy to take any questions as we go through.
I just wondered whether you perceived that Bracknell Forest was being punished for being a prudent, financially responsible council, because from what you've just said, it would appear that those councils that haven't been as prudent or financially responsible are being bailed out by the government and we're being punished. Is that reasonable or fair to say?
I don't think that's quite right, Councillor. The councils who are below us, they aren't being bailed out by the government. What they are being given is the opportunity to increase in 27-20 and 28-29 their council tax by as much as they deem they need to get to a better financial position for them. So the 95% floor is really targeted at councils who have, like Windsor and Maidenhead, have council tax which is well below the norm across the country. So we're not quite in that category. The reason why we are quite so poorly treated is because Bracknell Forest is not seen as a deprived area. That's the fact of it.
Councillor Barnard, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Stuart. I guess for many people, understanding the relative settlement is difficult. Am I correct in assuming that if you actually total this up, we have the 6th worst settlement in terms of local government in England as a consequence of this fair funding review?
We have the 6th lowest core spending power increase over the 3-year period of any council, any upper tier council in England. That's absolutely correct.
And how many upper tier councils are there?
That's a very good question. There are...
It's 140 something, isn't it?
Yeah, that sort of order.
So,
yes. So we are right at the very bottom of the pack. Yeah.
so at the risk of breaching the privilege, we are in a pretty difficult position in relation to many other local authorities.
Yes, it's one of the worst settlements.
Yes, so it's
of
not
any
a challenge,
council.
it's very difficult. Councillor Bidwell.
Indeed. So we can move on, please. So in terms of council tax, there has been a confirmation, as we expected, that the 4.99% threshold will continue to apply. That's been in place for many years. The previous government and this government makes an assumption that we will increase council tax by 4.99% in their calculation of how much resources available to us. I've already just indicated that there are actually 6 authorities who will benefit from, well, I say benefit from. I'm not sure it's necessarily something that you'd ask for, which is the ability to increase council tax by as much as you like, because clearly in a cost of living situation, which is difficult for many, it's not necessarily where you want to be, but they have the opportunity, should they choose to do so, to actually increase council tax. So that's new. That was not expected up to the settlement. So within the detail of the provisional settlement, it does acknowledge that some authorities who are not in those 6 may also be facing challenging financial positions, and they make the offer that if you wish to have a conversation with MHCLG about increasing council tax as part of flexibilities that I'll touch on a bit later more generally, then that's something which you are at liberty to do. So I'll come back to that shortly in the presentation. If we can move on. So in terms of how government will assess the need for further flexibility, there are a number of criteria set out in the council tax part of the provisional settlement. The key bit is that they say that if you are at the average or above the average, then they're not going to give you any more flexibility. That's not unreasonable. Bracknell Forest, of course, is one of the lowest council taxes of any unitary authority. We've been in the bottom 10%. We have been for many years, so therefore there would potentially, should you wish to put a case forward, be a case to give more flexibility for Bracknell Forest to increase council tax. It's not something that I necessarily expect to get a view on from councillors this evening, but is something that you will need to give consideration to. I suspect probably not for 26-27, because no council, even those who are getting flexibility in the years beyond that, are being allowed more than the 4.99% increase for 26-27, but I do think it's something that you may need to consider in future years, depending on how the other parts of our financial position start to look at that point. So I flag it for tonight for your early consideration, but I don't need an early answer on it. Next slide, please. So drawing together the impact of the settlement on our budget. So the papers in front of you, which went to the Cabinet meeting in December, started with a budget requirement of 136.6 million, as Councillor Bidwell said. So we assumed that we get income from core grant of 39 million and income from council tax at the current level is 87. So therefore that meant that we published a gap of 10.1 million pounds in December. That was before we knew the details of the provisional settlement and before any consideration of council tax increase. If you are to build in the government's assumed 4.99% council tax increase, the budget gap fell to still a large number of £5.8 million, but clearly lower than 10.1. If we then look at the impact of the provisional settlement, we were actually pretty much spot on in terms of our assessment of how much the core grant would be. We were a grand total of about £30,000 out, given that we're £136 million spending power. That's not bad. But what we didn't quite get right was how the flow funding arrangements would work. So we're actually going to be receiving an extra 857,000, I think the precise number is, in terms of a flow funding grant. So when you add that into the equation, then we're currently looking at a budget gap of around 4.9%, assuming a 4.99 council tax increase. There are, though, still quite a lot of areas where we need to finalise between the provisional and the draft budget. So the inflation calculation is a key one. We are looking very closely at the care price inflation. That's somewhere where we always look to work with other authorities to make sure that what we are looking at is not out of kilter with our neighbours and those who are purchasing the same type of placements in the same kind of areas. So that's still got to be finalised. It might well mean that our inflation calculation goes up a bit. I would not be surprised, but we're working through the details of that. Specific grant changes, there has been quite a significant consolidation in the number of specific grants. We now will have 4 quite large ones, and they are a combination of drawing together existing grants with one that's badged as new within the Children's and Youth Services grant. I'm not sure to what extent it really is new. We need to look at the detail of that still. In terms of those grants, we're assuming at this moment in time that they will be cost neutral, i.e. the spend that we will incur in those services will match the level of grant, but that's something that we will be able to really confirm when we get into the details of the conditions around those. Further thing is social care and transport demand pressures. Members who have been here for a while will know that we always recalculate the social care pressures in January, because the ones in the draft budget are based on caseload around the end of October. So we will update the figures to reflect more up-to-date and current caseloads as at the end of December. So that typically means that the pressure from those demand goes up a little bit. I'm not sure whether that will be the case this year. The numbers have not yet been worked through, but there will be a change undoubtedly from the provisional, the drafts budget proposals. And then the final thing that we're working through the details of is the business rates income. Now, we should not see any reduction from where we think we are at the moment, because the government has recognised that the scale of the changes to the business rate system is vast. So we're looking at a national revaluation, a business rates reset, the introduction of different multipliers for business rates, so a huge amount of change. So the government has recognised that it's very difficult to plan for that. So they have said that for 26-27, we will receive a guaranteed 100% of our baseline funding assessment for business rates. So it should not go down. We need to see if there might be any slack that we can actually build in a little bit of an increase by the time we get to the final budget. But that's very complex, not least because our software that we use has not yet been upgraded to meet the new requirements. That's not unusual. So we're working through that at the moment. 2 final things. The budget is clearly out to consultation at the moment. Councillors will wish to give thought to what the feedback is from that consultation. It's fairly early days. There have been, I think, 2 engagement sessions so far, 2 more to come. We have got, I think it's 34 responses through the online portal to the consultation to date. I expect there'll be quite a few more than that by the time we get to the end of it. So, but at least we know the portal's working, because we've had some. And then finally, when we get to the budget in February, members will be asked to consider the appropriate level of the corporate contingency, and that will be recommended by me, taking into account what I perceive as a level of risk in the budget. There's always risk in every budget. At the moment, we've got a corporate contingency of £4 million, which is quite high, but given that in the current financial year we're not predicting a significant overspend, then it might be that's something that we can look at as we get to the final budget in February. So that's where we are at the moment, councillors, in terms of the position. So a fair bit more to do, but the settlement has really confirmed that pretty much what we expected it to do is the key message. If you look ahead to that, please, the next slide, Sharon. So you don't need to look at all the detail of this, but what this does is rolls forward the funding allocations for the next 5 years. So the first 3 years, or 3 years of those, are within the settlement that's just been published. Beyond that, it's a little bit of a guesstimate from our side. But if you look at that compared to the proposals which are in the draft budget, and this includes those for 27, 28 and 28, 29, which aren't part of the consultation, they're just a signal of where we might be heading in the years ahead. So if you look at that, we are heading for a peak funding gap at the moment of close to £10.5 million in 28, 29, and it doesn't come down particularly quickly after that, and that's partly because we're starting the settlement period beyond this one with that gap that being propped up with the flow funding grant protection. So it's not a healthy position going ahead, unfortunately, where we are. So next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through in detail this evening. The key message from each year is that Bracknell Forest is not in a position where we would qualify for exceptional financial support in 26-27. We're not there. We have reserves, we have assets which we can use to make sure that we will achieve a balanced budget in 26-27. But we will at some point potentially get to the situation where that has to be considered. So this slide and the ones that follow set out the kind of issues that the government will expect us to have gone through and the kind of conditions that they will apply if we do get to the position of exceptional financial support. Although by the time Bracknell Forest gets there, if we do, it will not be exceptional. We expect at least 70 councils to be receiving exceptional financial support in 26-27, which is clearly not an exceptional position anymore. So we just move on, please. So the key elements which will help drive our final budget process for next year is around the use of flexible capital receipts. So that's something that the council has signed up to. We've agreed a policy for the last 2 years to use flexible capital receipts to fund transformational costs. When you look at the detail of the EFS requirements, they really are encouraging us to push that as far as we reasonably can. So therefore, I'm working with CMT colleagues at the moment around what are the costs that we will be incurring which are related to transformation, and inevitably they will be significant because our key challenge over the next few years will be to transform the organisation in response to the settlement that we're facing. So I expect to come to you in February with a much bigger request for a flexible capital receipt strategy, and that will be funded primarily by the disposal of one of our out-of-borough commercial investments, which was approved by the Cabinet back in December. Moving on, please. Essentially, what we need to do over the next few years is to have a plan for how we will get to the position of managing our financial pressures so that they get closer to our ongoing resources, because clearly if resources are staying constant over the next 3 years, our spending won't, because we'll have inflation, we'll have demand pressures and everything else. But what we need to come up with is a plan that stops the gap between the spending and the resources getting so huge that we can't afford to bridge it at a period in time. So the government expects that any council that requests EFS in 26-27 will come up with a balanced plan in 28-29 in the settlement period. I'm not sure how realistic that is given some of the scale of the EFS requests, but that's what the government expects for 26-27. But as I say, we will not be there for 26-27. Moving on, please. So when you do get there, then there's an awful lot of information requested, and your finances, your track record in delivering budgets, delivering transformation will be crawled all over by an external body such as SIPFA or someone else. So there is a high degree of rigour which is applied to any council's accounts and financial arrangements before they are allowed to get into EFS. Essentially, it has to be demonstrated that we have done everything that we can at a local level to manage our finances as best we can, and that we have exhausted any other local opportunities. That's the rules really by which you are judged before getting into EFS. So the final slide, please. So drawing all of that together, it really reinforces the financial strategy that we've been moving towards for a period of time, which is that we will balance 26-27 using reserves and probably a higher amount of flexible capital receipts than we have previously. We have the ability to do that, so therefore, there's no point going to government to saying we can't, because we clearly can. Going beyond that, we'll have to really transform the organisation, continue transforming the organisation into the years ahead, and we will look to seek an external partner. The reasons for that are twofold. Firstly, because that will give us some additional capacity and resource to actually effect the change, because we are a small organisation and there's only so much change we can manage within our in-house resource. So we will look externally for some support around that. And the final bit which we really need to look at in terms of our strategy, and that's something which I believe that Councillor Bidwell will be putting in the formal response to the provisional settlement consultation, is a reference to our £23 million safety valve reserve. Now clearly that was set aside for a particular purpose at a point in time as we went into safety valve. We've currently got a very large sum of money which was originally earmarked for general fund services, because we've been anticipating for a number of years we would not face a good settlement when it changed. So that was the reason why those reserves have been built up. So we do really need to push hard with government to get them back for that purpose, to help us manage the transition to that new financial settlement over the next few years. So if we can achieve this strategy, then I think we can avoid the need to request the EFS for a number of years. I'm not going to put a specific number on that because the 23 million is a really key factor in that, but we can certainly survive for a number of years without looking at EFS. But it is going to be a challenge for the next few years, there's no doubt about it. You know, it clearly does not take a lot to use up £223,000 in additional resource over the next 3 years. It's a very crazy position that we're in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let me start off with some questions, and I'll bring you in, Councillor Barnett, if that's okay. So, one function of this commission is to think and speak for residents' interests, and one of the key questions that residents will ask us all, and this is for you, Councillor Bidwell, is residents are going to be paying more council tax, but will feel that they are getting a reduction in services. This is a hard ask, because we've asked this of residents, and we're all residents, over a number of years. Is that the case, that we are asking residents to pay more and to get less?
No. Governments for many years have assumed in their funding allocations that council will increase council tax by the amount permitted, which for upper tier councils has been 4.99%, as we're all aware. If this doesn't happen, available funding would fall well below the government's calculated core spending power. For the 26-27 financial year, if councillors decide not to approve the permitted council tax increase, we would have 5.6 million less money to spend next year than in the current year. The 26-27 draft budget includes very few proposals that will reduce services, which I guess is the main point of the question. The only significant one is to reduce some bus routes that are used by a very small number of residents. We are currently consulting with service users about this, alongside our main budget consultation. The feedback will be taken into account when the final budget proposals are brought forward. Apart from this, residents should not experience any reduction in services.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
The first directly follows on from that. So, as we have seen from the proposal, Councillor Bidwell, that during the course of the next year, given what is going on in future years in terms of the tighter squeeze on our finances, where there will be service changes and inevitably, in some people's perception, reduction, doesn't that uncertainty in the organisation and the change that the organisation will need to undergo over the next 12 months potentially bring risk into that stability and security of delivering those services? Because whichever way you cut this, and I've got another question about this in a minute, whichever way you cut this, compared to many other authorities, we're expected to deliver what we have to deliver with an increase that might well not actually match inflation in certain areas. So I don't think you can be confident, because actually Stuart McKellar said this, that until you actually understand what some of the inflationary costs are, I don't think you can be clear or firm that actually there won't be a reduction, because there's less money in the system, even with the use of reserves. So you can't actually say that until you're absolutely certain where those numbers go.
Well, I think we've already explained that we are confident that we can do that initially. There's a tactical and a strategic approach to the budget. First is making sure that we get to next year. Want me to finish? Yeah. But strategically, it's about putting those initiatives and transformation activities in place so that we can change services without affecting essential services for our residents. And where possible, engaging with the community to help them deliver some of the services that we can better deliver that aren't particularly exposed at the moment.
Yeah. To follow
Sorry.
up to that, Chair.
Yeah.
No, I'm specifically referencing the fact that we saw a slide that said that at this stage we're still working through the inflation implications in care areas, and we know from elsewhere and changes in business rates and changes in other things, and also the additional cost of employment, that those services is a little bit less predictable than matching it to the national rate of inflation. So I repeat, until such time as those numbers are finally nailed down, I don't believe you can give an assurance that there won't be a squeeze on services, because if that inflation rate exceeds the amount of money that's been put in the budget to meet the client lead and the expected demand, then that's not assurance you can give. It might happen, but I think it's a bit disingenuous at the moment to say that you're absolutely certain about that. It's a very specific thing. Strategic, yep, fine, get that. But this is about actually the detailed frontline delivery. And my caveat is, let's wait and see when those numbers have been worked through and what the final budget looks like. But I don't think you can give the insurance about no service reduction until we've seen that. You never can in any year. So it's not just because of this financial settlement. This is actually something that happens every year until you see how those costs balance.
Noted. There is always an element of risk, but we're confident that we can mitigate that risk in the way that we've explained on the presentation.
I believe Councillor Watts has got a question, correct? Councillor Watts?
Thank you, Chair, and I do apologise for not being there in person. I have children off sick today. A question is mainly directed at Councillor Bailey, but Stuart, you may also be able to answer this, but are we looking at a potential school bus for children that are going out of borough? Because I imagine it will save us a lot of money, because we would reduce the number of drivers that we have, and we'd also be reducing, the environmental damage. Has anybody looked at this, like how many students are going to either the same areas or the same schools? Is that something we can look at?
I anticipated a number of education questions, which I can either leave to my point or I can try and answer that. Prefer to wait.
Let's come back to that one, because actually it's a question that has come up from the analysis of the budget around school transport. So let's pick that one up in a minute. If that's all right with you, Councillor Watts. There are some other questions on that one. Yep. Councillor McLean's got a question.
Actually, Chairman, two, but a slightly different one is on a sort of local level. The other is slightly more on a macro level. So just so I'm clear, and I can't remember all the figures immediately that I've seen on the slides, but Councillor Bidwell, are you saying that despite the fact we're going to have a £10 million shortfall in the next couple of years, our residents shouldn't have anything to worry about because services will be maintained? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the gap is 4.8 now.
Which is going to go to 10?
No. It will do in the following financial year.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, of course, we have to start work immediately after we agree this budget on the next year's budget, and when that happens, we'll have a better view as to whether there's any risk to services. We don't anticipate there will be, because that will be the priority for this council, to make sure that residents have essential services as a priority.
Right. So I'm minded, there's a scene in the film Naked Gun where Frank Drebin is standing in front of a fireworks factory that's exploding, and he's telling all the people outside that there's nothing to see here, there's nothing happening. I just had a feeling that you're telling the residents that despite this terribly awful financial settlement with the oxymoron fair funding, actually no one has anything to worry about because it's all going to be fine. I'm not sure I'm in the same place as you. I'm not going to accuse you of complacency, but from what I've heard from you so far, it's suggesting that you think it's all going to turn out well in the end. That's the first point. The second point is a slightly more macro level question. Given your enthusiasm for combined authorities and a mayor sitting on top of a undefined region of which Bracknell Forest will form part, and given the fact the government in its fair funding settlement is suggesting that we're not a deprived area, therefore are not benefiting from grants as much as other local authorities, maybe there's an argument for us pushing for a mayor, whoever that happens to be, whenever that happens to be, to encourage further decentralisation of the central government and take local government financing for this region away from the government and let people who actually know what this area needs make decisions on the allocation of spending. Is this something that you as an administration would be prepared to consider? Because quite frankly, I'm not any more confident of this government as I was the last government that they're the best people to make choices about what Bracknell Forest spends and how it spends it, because I'm not sure central government is the right place to do that. Now, I'm not suggesting that we sign up to the Liberal Democrat approach to local income tax, but we do have a major problem with local government finance, and I've been saying it for the last 20 odd years. Somebody needs to get a grip on it. What's your view on that?
Well, I probably share quite a similar view, to be honest. But what we do going forward is not something I can debate here. Personally, I think that we should be lobbying government in a way to be able to get additional funding or decentralisation of power. But that's not my say. My gift is something that, as a cabinet and a council, we have to agree together.
I'll just give you a question, then I'll go on to Councillor Barnard. So clearly we are filling a gap with our reserves. You've given us that the picture that requires us to do that. We've seen the pressures over the years with the 3-year funding settlement. Can you give me your perception of how you got to the place where this is the only answer to use that reserves to fill that gap?
Well, you've been presented on how we have achieved the budget proposal so far, and as best as we can, that's where the position we're in, and the only way to balance the budget is to use those reserves. We don't want to use reserves where we can possibly help it, because of course once they're gone, they're gone. There is still some work to be doing. There's still some consultation feedback to come into the council, and also there's the final words from the government about business rates and a few other things. So I think given the experience this council has at setting budgets, we're pretty accurate about where we are, and I don't think there's any alternative than to use those reserves as summarised.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Just a quick observation on the last count. I sat in this council chamber for many years. When the Labour group was in opposition, they encouraged us to spend our reserves on a very regular basis. But I've got two questions. The first is, can you share with me, in terms of the spend, are we spending approximately the same with inflation on climate change initiatives in the year ahead than we did last year, or in line with this sort of general thing, are we seeing any change there? It's just a fact. I mean, just interested.
I don't have that number. We can give you that number. 50,000.
50,000 reduction, good. And just linked to that, has it been brought to Cabinet members' attention, the preparation of the budget, the suggestion, and sadly, because we were actually at East Hampstead Park Crematorium this morning too, remember a past councillor, that actually up to now we have been using any unclaimed metals from the crematorium to actually, for charitable purposes, and I understand that the original idea was them to go to bereavement charities, but it is being suggested, and I haven't looked into the detail, that now that might be a more commercial undertaking where the council will benefit.
Well, that's news to me, but it sounds like something worth investigating for sure.
So let me be clear, Councillor Bidwell, something which is sensitive and sees something changed, actually taking money away from charity. Can I ask, was that ever shared with Cabinet members in preparation of this budget? But you were unaware of it?
I forgot.
So you forgot actually taking money away from bereavement charities in favour of commercial undertaking?
Well, I think if you're trying to make a point about cold-heartedness, then your point is made.
Because my point in this, Councillor Bidwell, and then I'll come on to the safety valve question, is very simple. It's about choices. You have choices within a budget as to whether you do that and other things. It's just understanding that small changes be made elsewhere where bigger changes could be made in other areas. My question is about the safety valve, and I think, Stuart, this is one here. So I know that we had to sort of put this sum of money aside, 23 million, which would be hugely helpful in the years ahead if we could access it. Is the government lobbying on this linked to the white paper we're expecting on special educational needs and how actually the high needs situation, which is still unresolved, being sorted out? Or is this something that we'd ask the government to do regardless of whether they're thinking on special needs? Because, of course, we know already in this Parliament there's been a huge difference between what's been initially proposed and what's finally been enacted. So it's just to get an idea of how likely we are to see that money released in the next year or 2 years would be helpful. Thank you.
I can answer that, Chair. We would be asking the question anyway, given the financial position, but clearly a request will need to be framed by what specifically the government's proposals are around funding SEND deficits over the next 3 years and then beyond, and we haven't yet got visibility of that.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle and then Councillor Haffajee.
Are we on? We are on. Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle, Crowthorne. We keep mentioning reserves, so how much we got?
50.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. The report says that we have £10 million available to support the 26-27 budget. Whenever we get to the end of each financial year, we will look at all of our reserves and look to see to what extent they are still required for the purpose for which they've been set aside at a point in time. So my advice is £10 million for this year. That excludes the £23 million safety valve reserve. We'll have another look at the reserves at the end of the current financial year.
You can only spend once. So how are you, if necessary, going to prioritise the requests for the reserves to be used?
Well, that is part of the budget setting process. We are coming to the end of next year's financial budget. Once that has been signed off, then we will look to what glean we need from any reserves for the following year and so on.
And your priority is?
Essential services to the residents.
And they may be?
Adult social care, children's services, I would say.
And Chair, supplementary for Councillor McLean. May I? Thank you very much. Can we looking forward, talking about the mayoral, I know that Manchester spends £7 million on their mayoral support. Do we have that sort of support going forward, do you think?
I don't have any idea about that, to be honest. I don't know what the number is.
Something to think about, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haffajee.
Thank you, Councillor Haffajee. Yes. So it might not be obvious to everyone here. So can I just check that due to the supplement for the Cabinet papers relating to the integrated assessment report for the climate change team savings proposals, that the original version that we have in the report papers, that's pages 254 to 271, is replaced by the more favourable version that has been provided in pages 477 to 495, essentially the ones from the supplement. That's correct, yeah? Yeah, super. Okay, and then kind of relating to the £50,000 for climate change, they're not actually savings, they're not cuts. I believe that's actually due to the new funding proposals we're looking at instead. Our climate change efforts for the last year have been good. We've got a really solid strategy and strong action plans. However, there is a long way to go still. What assurances can you give us that the services, strategy and action plans will not be at risk should the alternative funding provision not be fully found? That's both for this coming year as well as the future years.
Well, again, we'll have to look at that as we go forward. I mean, clearly this is a mainstay of our manifesto is climate change. So we would not want to lower that priority, but we have to be very cognizant of the fact of the monies available.
So we will be looking at getting reports for this as we get onto it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to move us forward. When you look at the budget, the key stresses that the budget will present are through the services we provide. The one I'm going to start with is the transition that services that we provide as children move from children's to adult social care. Clearly, it's a very substantial part of the business that the council provides. I'm going to start with asking the cabinet member, how are you going to mitigate the increase in costs we're going to see? How are you going to look at delivering services in a way which reflects the financial situation we are in? And how are you hedging the demand risks in the next financial year?
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Services and Health. So this year we've got 65 children transitioning. That's from children's services to adult services. It's quite hard to know how many of those are going to require services as an adult. Some of them might require, some of them might stay on an education provision. Some of them might refuse services and agree to have the capacity to refuse them. So you've got this very uncertain environment, and what the council does is they have a mitigation they look at out of the 65 children, they estimate that 60% of them will require services in adulthood. We also have the issue that some children transitioning last year, those costs aren't coming through until this year, and we've got 14 children in that situation. So this coming financial year compared to the previous financial year, we're seeing an increase of 65% of the number of children transitioning from children's services to adult services. The projection of that cost has actually been recalculated. It's a little bit lower than what it says in the budget document, which was 750,000. It's now been revised down to 675,000. The projected cost range of each of those individual children ranges from 110,000 per year to £555 per year. So it gives you an idea of how, what the different packages could be for those children. Now, some of those children will also be reassessed by the NHS in the continuing healthcare model, because the continuing healthcare model is more amenable to children requiring medical care in adulthood. Young people becoming adults and requiring NHS care. So some of that care will be moved into NHS continuing healthcare. So what we're doing to mitigate against this, we have a dedicated, this year we'll have a dedicated person who's going to be reviewing all those cases and looking at the continuing, whether or not those children require continuing health care as they move into adulthood. So we've got someone dedicated to that. We're also looking at our model for increasing independent living and intervening relatively early with children from ages 14, preparing them for adulthood, so that they are not requiring so much intervention as they move into adulthood. So things like travel training, independence, and we're looking at building a model and having a strategy on transition. So these investments we're going to be seeing in this coming year to hopefully mitigate against ongoing costs as the years go on. What else was there on there? Yes, I think that's it. And obviously we have this very strong Preparing for Adulthood programme, which is a clear, we have an approaching adulthood multidisciplinary team, and we have lots of input working with Berkshire Healthcare Foundation Trust, Frimley, various stakeholders we have this multidisciplinary team that's made sure that we have the best possible level of care for young people as they transition from children's social services to adult social services, and we're looking at strengthening that team as we move into future years. Did it go off? It went off. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry if that. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I have a question from Councillor Tina Mackenzie-Boyle, and then I'll just come back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Very, very useful. However, can we also think about the rest of our residents, the elderly? What investment will you be looking at and putting in? Because it's not only our children. You've got to remember that. So what investment have you made for the elderly, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie-Boyle. That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it because we are looking at one of the so there's two things we're doing at Invest to Save. One of them is our framework for providing residential nursing care. We're looking at managing that market. So there's some work going on with our commissioners to make sure that we have a clear model of providing core care and flexible care for older adults, and making sure that we're not reactive. We have a clear framework for adults requiring adult social care. So that's something we're doing in Invest to Save. Another thing we're doing in Investment to Save is we are looking at a model of extra care housing. So this is where people are in housing where, as their needs change, that they can have extra care. So this is supported housing, but it's a special kind of supported housing. As their needs change, they can have more interventions to help them with their health, and that is funded through a different model. It's funded through housing benefit and improve. I can't remember what the word is. Additional there's a sort of improved housing benefit or something. So then the model. So in creating that extra care facility, we then have a different way of funding the housing for people who require adult social care. So that's two Invest to Save things we're doing. And then also we're looking to streamline some services. So still providing the same by creating something called the One Prevention Team. So that is aligning the sort of admin roles of our Breakthrough service, which is do you know Breakthrough, which is for adults who are looking for employment, who maybe have learning disabilities, our dementia services and our community network being for people living with mental health issues. We're looking to align the sort of admin side of that, so we've got a clearer team called the One Prevention Team, and hopefully that means we'll be able to provide the same service, or the aim is to provide the same service but have less administration costs in the back room. So that's some of the work we're doing to improve services.
Very, very quickly, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what's the projected cost?
Projected cost of the savings or the Invest to Save? So looking at Invest to Save, we're looking at some additional costs in the coming year that will bring in cost. And if you give me a minute, I can find it on the budget. But okay. So it looks like the total of that Invest to Save fund is 1 million, and from what I remember, I think about 400,000 of that is within adult social care, or maybe a little bit less, maybe it's 350. So that is looking, and it is in the budget, I can refer you to the page, but so that is looking at your extra care, so having, staff and the commissioning work around the extra care, around managing the care provider framework, and doing the whole transition work as well for children into adults.
Thank you for that detail.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, thank you for talking about that transition from children to adults. One thing I do know is that this council does an excellent job in terms of understanding the needs of children, particularly those we have responsibility for, and understand their needs as they move into adulthood. And there's a lot of planning going, and given some of the changes, Brolly with SEND. Hopefully we can understand their needs. My question, though, is one of understanding risk and demand going forward. We have a 3-year financial settlement. We have speaking from personal experience, an ageing demographic in Bracknell Forest. We also have a situation where in the macro economy, there is some weakness in the economy. There's rising unemployment, which inevitably will impact on Bracknell Forest, as we saw during the last financial crisis. That then puts pressure on families. Sadly, it puts pressure on families. It puts pressure on people's mental health, their ability to work and things like that. Given that more macro situation, which seems to be actually sadly playing out at the moment, how are we factoring in that potential risk in terms of looking at future years? Because, of course, in past years, we always hung on to the fact that we might or might not get any additional funding in a 1-year settlement. We see what this looks like based on a trajectory of demand. How are we actually trying to work on that? Because that's in addition to all the services we're trying to reshape, that sort of more neighbourhood community-led model and things like that. But if it goes the same way it did in previous financial crises, you could see a 5, 10, 15% increase in demand on some services that we might not have factored in a year, 18 months ago. So just interested how that's going, because that is a huge risk relative to inflation risk, but it's potentially a huge situation if things don't turn around at the macro level in the short to medium term, because we've seen it. We saw it with the impact on families in the past and things like that.
You're right, that obviously there'll be uncertainty in the future. What we have done is looking at our demographics. We've worked out that we will have an additional cost pressure in the following 2 years of about £400,000 a year. That's on top of our current cost pressures. So I'm aware of that. But obviously we cannot, we also don't know what's around the corner with regards of, cost of living crisis, etc. But we have factored in for an ageing population and changes in need. I suppose we're really hopeful about the community model. We're really, personally, from my sort of adult social care perspective, I would love to see much more work done about preparing for old age for all of us, and personally I have done my LPA because when I spoke to a director of people and said, what can we do at our age to prepare for ageing, which is the first thing she says, do your LPA. So I think there's quite a lot of messaging there about how we age well, and hopefully that will come through in the community model, and that we will have people in, we will have less crises which do not only cost the council a lot of money, but also cost the NHS a lot of money. So I would love to see that. And actually, I also sit on the National LGA Health and Social Care panel, and we're doing a lot of work at that level as well, at looking at how do we manage ageing of the nation, and it's something that I'm really interested in, and really hope that we have a better model nationally and within Bracknell. So that's the hope. Thank you.
Councillor Eggleston has got a hand up online. Caroline?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Councillor Wright, thank you very much for giving your answers so far. I've just got a couple of questions, please. The extra care, how many adults will that support, and will it actually meet the demands?
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. Next year is all about investigating that and commissioning for that. And the aim is, yes, it will be, it will hopefully meet the people that want to go into extra care will have that opportunity. And obviously it's looking at how we provide that, and but that's part of that invest to save, is that whole looking at the model and what's going to be, what's going to be acceptable, and we'll do that co-production work about speaking to people about how they view it working. So yeah, sorry to not give you a number, but that's what the work will be next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one other quick question. Under the 2.0 new hospital model, does the budgeting include the technology allowing people to come out of hospital and have their care at home?
Sorry, I missed the first bit of that question. Say it again, sorry.
So under the 2.0 hospital,
yes,
the new model, does the budget include the technology that residents will need when they are when they leave hospital earlier, so that the social care costs don't go up because the technology will help them to stay at home?
Thank you for that question. It's a good question. I think that money, I mean, I've maybe checked, but I think that money would come from the Better Care Fund, so it wouldn't come from within the council's, the Better Care Fund is a separate fund from the government to provide that, to ensure that we have that smooth movement from hospital back to the community. And I would like to think that that's where the provision will be if we're looking at discharging people earlier. But I don't know I'm getting a nod from Director of People, so I think that's where the funding will be. But yes, you're right to highlight it, but we'll need to make sure that that's where it comes from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just rounding off this particular area because of time. So this is really for you, Councillor Bailey. Obviously, transitions in particular is a handover. Does this budget give you the resources that you need so that the children's aspect of the transition support is successful?
I don't know how best to answer that. I mean, I've come prepared with quite a comprehensive response because we are challenged in a way that I think is unprecedented. Our expenditure for out-of-borough placements for education is very significant. Would it be helpful if I just ran through that to put it more in context, or do you?
We're going to come on to out-of-borough placements. It's really just rounding off the transition element here, recognising that the funding is in place to have a successful approach to transitions going into 26-27.
I'm confident in the context of that, yes, but it was the caveat of what I should be saying later.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move us on. One of the other delivery pressures has seen us look at a capital programme sale. In particular, we are looking at selling a commercial property, which therefore will mean we have an income loss going forward. This is really for you, Councillor Bidwell. What is our medium-term strategy for managing our out-of-borough property assets, bearing in mind that they have provided a good source of income in the past? What are you going to use the receipts for this particular property sale? And how will the annual income be replaced?
Thank you, Chair. The Council purchased these assets and is continuing to manage them as investments to secure additional income to support statutory services. Changes to financial and borrowing rules introduced by the previous government mean that it is no longer possible to purchase new investment assets, but we will continue to hold current investment assets where they represent best value. Given that leases will become due for renewal in the next few years, we have the independent advice of how we should manage these going into the future. A report on our strategy will be brought to the Cabinet in February, setting out the proposed approach for each of the assets that will cover what we need to invest in, where we might dispose of assets, and where we might take actions to protect long-term opportunities for income for the Council. So the proceeds, following on from that, your second question about the use of the receipts, the proceeds from the sale of the property agreed at Cabinet on the 16th of December last year will be used to supplement the revenue budget, as Stuart alluded to earlier, using our flexible use of capital reserves approach. This funding will be focused on funding costs related to transforming our services and working towards cost savings and cost avoidance to enable a balanced budget in the future. So how will we replace this income? The revenue income from the assets which are sold would not be replaced, as the Council was no longer able to purchase or invest in out-of-borough investments, which is what I said earlier. As set out above, the capital receipts can be used for transformational purposes supporting the ongoing revenue budget. Our strategy for some of the assets will be to regularise, it's easy for me to say, isn't it? Lease terms with the existing tenants or relet at lease end to maintain income streams and improve capital appreciation of the portfolio asset. This will be set out in the report to Cabinet in February. So, in essence, it's a bit of a balancing act. We have out-of-borough assets. There is some income there, but we have to evaluate whether the investment to keep that revenue coming it justifies having that asset, and whether releasing that asset and recognising the revenue is worth doing. And that will be summarised in the report in February.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you. When we had those slides about exceptional financial support, I think it was slide 4, there was reference there to the steps that the government would expect you should take before achieving this. Would this put those assets at risk of having to be sold to meet the criteria for exceptional financial support? Because, you know, notwithstanding anything, we do at the moment get a revenue stream that exceeds the costs associated with actually owning those properties, or because they're making money, for want of a better word, that actually potentially we'd be able to hold on to them to continue to support our financial position. Because it strikes me, if it's the former, it's almost going to be like a forced sale to meet the government's requirements, whereas actually at the moment they're providing a good income and actually hopefully at least stable, if not appreciating value.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, at the moment the market is not great, and we've already seen stupid offers being put to us for those properties, which obviously we will not be taking. If we get as far as IFS, which I hope we don't, then clearly any assets that the council can liquidate will be up for grabs. But I'm hoping we won't get to that stage.
Well, I mean, just on that, I mean, actually that's even more worrying than I thought, because my assumption was that over time we might actually be able to get back something we put in. But what you're actually saying, potentially, if our financial position deteriorates in the same way as 70 other authorities in a similar basket do, we could be forced to sell them at any cost to meet the requirements of achieving financial success at that time. Because the core thing is, it's judging when things are right. And I know the finance is there, but it would worry me considerably if we move towards that position that we'd be forced to sell or whatever we could get for them at that time.
Well, let's take one step at a time. The first thing is to recognise what we have and what best course of action to take to manage those out-of-borough assets going forward.
So we're a pretty sound investment in the first place compared to many other councils.
Yes, but times have changed and costs have gone up for maintenance, and maintenance as opposed to revenue is something that we have to take into account.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bidwell. My question is in a couple of parts. The first is, can you assure us that the rigour that the council adopted in taking the decision to acquire such commercial properties will continue to be used in decisions over their potential disposal? That's the first question. The second question is, and it may be impossible to answer, but has any modelling been done to ascertain the impact of the changes to business rates on the income that the council may derive from these commercial property investments? And also, has any modelling been done to ascertain the impact within Bracknell Forest on a fall in commercial rates if businesses cease to operate due to the proposed increase in business rates that the government is proposing to introduce? Because I would have thought that was a significant element on our risk register if, due to actions of the government, we see significant business failings because they can't afford to pay business rates. What impact is that going to have on our budgeting?
Well, there's quite a lot there. Let's take the property question first, because that's fairly straightforward, if any of these questions can be answered straightforwardly, because there are many outside influences on the economy that could affect things going forward. The rigour on what we do with our out of borough assets will be in place, and we're already taking steps to make sure that the correct rigour is put in place by putting a consultancy report together that you will see the output of in February, so that we have a strategy going forward on how we decide what to do with these out-of-borough assets. Clearly, the temptation is to keep them, and I would certainly, without prejudging the report, income is better than no income, but I don't know what the outcome of that report is going to be. If the investment to keep those properties generating income is a simple maths problem, isn't it? Is it excessive? Then we may have to take a different approach. As far as business rates is concerned, I don't know about the modelling. It's still unclear, what the government's going to decide. It's already changed its mind this week on business rates. I think for the council, obviously any reduction in B rates is hurtful, but we can't control economic factors that drive businesses towards closure or moving out of those properties. What I can say is we would be trying everything to facilitate an opportunity to be able to understand that better with those businesses, but we can't affect what happens outside of the council.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to come back. My first question was the same level of rigour going to be applied to the potential disposal as was applied to the acquisition? You haven't actually told me that it is going to be the same rigorous process. You've told me, as I think I understand it, that there will be a rigorous process, but I know we did a significant amount of due diligence when we acquired these properties in the first place, hence the reason that they've performed so well and the income we've derived has been beneficial, unlike some other local authorities. So I want reassurance from you that the same degree of rigour will be applied. That's the first point. The second point is, we're seeing lots of business premises, particularly offices, in the borough being moved from commercial to residential. That will have an impact on business rates. If businesses fail in Bracknell Forest, if our high streets start to fail in Bracknell Forest, that will have a significant impact on our business rates. My concern is, do we have any idea what that impact might be and how it will impact our budgeting? Because clearly, if we're not getting the business rates, we can't have the money to spend.
I'll answer the first part. The rigour, commendable rigour on acquiring these properties was many years ago, and those properties are now coming to end of life in some cases and need investment in them. So yes, the rigour on whether we dispose them or not will be in place. We are not going to have a fire sale, as was implied, but the market has changed. Property prices are dropping and have significantly dropped since over the last couple of years, so we have to factor that in, and that will be what comes out of the consultancy report that we will be publishing, or will be available to the Cabinet in February. As far as the second part of the question, I'm going to hand over to Stuart.
Thank you, through Chair. If I can just correct a little bit of what Councillor Biddle just said, that the assets aren't coming to the end of the lease. The key point is they come to the end of the leases, which are in place. None of the assets are about to fall down, just to reassure councillors of that. In terms of the second part, yes, there is a risk because the business rates retention system does transfer some of that into local authorities. So we have been able to retain a significant amount of growth in previous years. If the business rates take locally grows again, then we'll get a proportion of that. If the rates reduce, then yes, we do bear a proportion of that risk as well. So the government is underwriting 100% protection in 26-27. It will then revert back to the normal 92%, 92.5% protection. Given that our business rates baseline is around £11 million for years going ahead, that means that the risk that we face is potentially up to around £1 million if everything goes pear-shaped. So it's a significant risk, but it's not multi-millions, Councillor McLean.
Councillor Tina McKenzie-Boyle.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Can we go back to business rates you know, I know very much that you're such a real stalwart in our Crowthorne High Street. You're very much always there. So it worries me, can I just say. One of the really biggest concerns with Bracknell Forest is the valuations of the valuation offices forced upon the different areas. There doesn't seem to be any parity nor fairness, with large differences often discouraging business and in some cases causing businesses to close. We don't want that, especially Crowthorne High Street. The drain on the small local businesses and the business people with their business rates now prevents recruitment of additional staff and apprentices. For instance, hairdressers, they can't take on apprentices because they're not bringing any money and they're renting out chairs. So just as an example, for instance, butchers, as you know, in the High Street, we've got Dobson's Butchers, 48 High Street, currently rated 325 per square metre. From 1st of April, their rateable value is going to be £10,250 from April. Magdalenka, Polish Delicatessen, Rectory Road, East Hampstead, currently rated 220, rateable value £11,500. Hatto, Frimley Road in Camberley, currently rated at 270, rateable value £11,000. Currently, it's going to be £13,000. So, analysing the figures and keeping it brief, businesses are being penalised, it seems, being in a nice area. And some areas cost double in other areas. This doesn't mean that rents are double. It just means the valuation office seems to be and deems them more taxable, it seems. Supermarkets benefit from lower rates. In Crowthorne, the Co-op, which local delis and butchers compete with, are getting a reduced rate of £170. Why? How can the local small businesses, which we know that we would like very much to support, how can we when that sort of thing happens? So with central government effectively planning to take the business rates income from successful councils and use the monies to, let's call it the supporting the ones that don't look after themselves particularly well. If you open a butcher's in the north, Bradford for example, expect business rates of 150 square metres, less than half that of some areas in Bracknell Forest Council. So why should Dobson's be penalised compared to the CLS, where the motivation to shop local when the shop down the road can produce and sell sausages for a lot less than a local shop? We need some clarification and we need some baseline for you to take it back to central government and say it cannot go on. We will lose our high streets. We will lose the very essence, the very core of our communities. We need the help and the support, sir.
Well, that sounded rather like a statement rather than a question, but office is a central government function. We can lobby and we can engage with the local MP to try and lobby and understand how they come to those figures. But unless Stuart's got anything to add, I think that's out of our control. And I certainly do and have stood up in various forums, both in the Forest and in Parliament, and said that I don't think it's fair that small businesses are treated the same as corporations as far as business rates are concerned.
I'm going to move us on to one of the other delivery pressures, which is the out-of-borough placements for education. And I know this is for Councillor Bailey. This is a significant area of risk. The costs to our budget for 26-27. So there's a number of questions. First of all, how are you going to mitigate increasing costs this year through inflation and other pressures? What other delivery options are you investigating, recognising the pressures to your budget? How are you going to hedge any risk? And I'd just like you to also start to think and give us a view on how you're going to look at the choices between Bucklers Park and other special provision.
Thank you, Chair. Let me begin. As I said briefly a few moments ago, I set the context of this just to lay out the figures to you, which I'm happy to share later. There are three types of out-of-borough placements for our children with special educational needs. First, there's the independent, non-maintained special schools, which are high-cost private provision, including further education. Now, we have 360 children in those schools. The average cost per pupil is £37,982, giving a grand total of £13,659,257. So it is very significant. The next level is the maintained schools, including academies and free schools out of the borough, which also include resource provision or maintained special schools. We have 175 children in those schools, an average cost per pupil of £24,031, and the total cost of millions is £4,199,356, a lot of money again. The final category is alternative provision, and we have 82 children in those. Average cost per pupil is £16,742, giving a total of £1,377,548, giving a grand total of £19,236,161. So it's a big number, and there's no escaping from it. Can I just also add briefly before I move on to that first part of your series of questions? Anything above £40,000 has to go to CMT for approval. This is not just approved willy-nilly. Serious consideration, focused consideration is given to every application because it's a large amount of money. So what am I doing and what is the council doing to mitigate the increase in costs? Bracknell Forest Council's SEND strategy from 23 to 26 places strong emphasis on expanding local provision to meet current and future needs. Under Priority 2, the strategy commits to ensuring that local capacity of schools and education provision meets the current and future needs of children and young people with SEND. This includes increasing the number of specialist resource bases in mainstream and academy schools, as well as expanding special school places to reduce reliance on out-of-borough and independent, non-maintained specialist settings. A key element to meet the above approach was to target the use of the safety valve capital funding to expand local SEND capacity, which is around £4 million. Significant investment has been directed into Edgeborough and Sandhurst schools to develop additional specialist resource bases, and they're very good. Let me say I've been to them, enabling more children with complex needs to be educated within the borough. These two provisions have created 50 planned places, allowing children to be taught within the local schools and communities. In addition, the creation of the new Hawthorne Academy, which is funded by our council, dedicated 50 planned places, SEMH school, which is social, emotional and mental health school, will provide high quality provision for pupils who might otherwise require costly out-of-area placements. These initiatives are designed to deliver long-term savings by increasing in-borough provision, reducing transport costs and ensuring that children receive appropriate support closer to home while maintaining financial sustainability. The commissioning team also plays a critical role in managing financial pressures arising from independent and non-maintained special schools. Bracknell is a member of the Children's Cross-Regional Arrangements Group, a partnership of local authorities working collaboratively to support the sourcing, contracting, monitoring and annual fee negotiations for children's placements, with the aim of improving outcomes for children and young people. In addition, Bracknell leads on fee negotiations for the range provider markets involving that type of commissioning arrangement where those requirements don't apply. As demand for specialist placements grows, providers are seeking significant fee uplifts, often citing inflationary pressures and workforce costs. To mitigate this, Bracknell Forest commissioning function is actively negotiating with providers to ensure any increases are proportionate, evidence-based and aligned with contractual obligations. This includes benchmarking costs against regional and national data, challenging unjustified uplifts, and exploring opportunities for multi-year agreements to provide budget stability. Commissioning also works collaboratively with other local authorities to strengthen market influence and secure best value while maintaining quality and safeguarding standards for children with complex needs. And what am I doing to investigate other delivery options? Well, through formal submissions, meetings with the DFE officials and collaboration with key stakeholders, including regional SEN networks, I've been championing the case for Bucklers Park as a strategic location that will deliver high quality, local provision and reduce reliance on costly independent placements. This lobbying effort has been aligned with the Council's Safety Valve programme and SEND strategy, ensuring that the proposal supports both educational outcomes and long-term financial stability. This school, Bucklers Park School, was approved in March 23, but put on hold by the national government whilst they reviewed the policy position and approach. Following an update to this position shortly before Christmas, and in order to enable delivery of the new ASD school at Bucklers Park, it's going to be called Forest View, we're working in close partnership with the Department for Education and the appointed academy sponsor to ensure the projected pupil numbers and timeline are submitted to the DFE by the 27th of February. In terms of how am I hedging demand risk for the financial year 26-27, I'm taking proactive measures to manage and mitigate demand risks associated with rising numbers of children requiring specialist placements during that time. This includes accelerating delivery of in-borough provision through projects such as Forest View, the new SEMH school at Hawthorne Academy, alongside expanding specialist resource bases at Edgeborough and Sandhurst. In addition, extending current capacity within existing resources is being explored. By increasing local capacity, the Council aims to reduce reliance on independent and non-maintained special schools, which, as outlined above, carry significantly higher costs. In addition, commissioning strategies are being strengthened to secure multi-year agreements with providers, stabilise fee structures and benchmark costs regionally. These actions, combined with ongoing engagement with the Department for Education through the Safety Valve programme, provide a framework to hedge against unpredictable demand growth while maintaining financial sustainability and statutory compliance. Do you want me now to deal with the home to school transport? Or?
No, if you wait for that. What I ask members, just recognising the time, the questions we ask are nice and focused to Councillor Bailey. Councillor Tina Mackenzie-Boyle, you ladies first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you very much for your report. I've asked a number of occasions, and I still haven't heard. May I ask, please, what happened to the 17k that was secured by our previous MP for Bucklers Park?
I'm really sorry, but could you repeat that last part? I didn't hear it.
Sorry, is it not working? I'll ask again. I have asked before. There was 17,000. Sorry, yes, 17,000 for Bucklers Park, which was secured by our previous MP. Can you tell us what's happened to that money? Because nothing seems to have happened on the SEN site at Bucklers Park.
Yeah, I think the position there is that we had all assumed that the school was approved when it was read out in the report here, and that money had been allocated for that. But obviously it wasn't and hasn't, and that's why there had to be this major review.
Councillor Barnard.
Thank you. Well, there is one thing that has happened in Bucklers Park, of course. There's the school. There's the no stopping school signs actually on the road outside where the school goes, which I thought was quite amusing. The serious point is, despite the fact that through the strategy that you outlined, the SEND strategy, we clearly identified the need for the school, plus additional resource. Is it not the case at the moment there's still uncertainty amongst the parent body in Bracknell Forest, because we're consulting on whether actually we want a special school, or as the government wants, in line with its ideological thinking, I have to add, because it's very clear from the Secretary of State, they're not pro-special school, they actually would prefer to see all children in mainstream schools as far as possible. Are we in a situation now where actually we can put that uncertainty to rest and plough ahead? Because we know that even if you put a spade in the ground in 2026-7, it's going to be 2 to 3, possibly even 4 years before you have an SEND special school at Buckler's Park at full capacity, reducing that. And linked to that is a question I'll come back to later on, homeschool transport. But where are we on that? Because every month, every week we delay on this is delaying the opening of that school, which we need to support the mixed economy in terms of special education in these places we've got.
I'm not, and I don't think any of us are happy with the current situation. We had assumed and hoped and expected the school be built this year. It's a 3-year programme. The money was never there. Clearly, with a change in government, they've had to review everything because of the £23 billion black hole. I'm hoping, and I don't think there's any particular position here, I'm in favour of the new school. I know the council will look rigorously at all of this, the arguments for and against. The evidence suggests powerfully and ambiguously that we need a new special autism school.
Years ago.
And I will be ploughing on for that, and I'm lobbying on a daily basis through our MP. We're writing to the council, to the government. We really think there's a powerful need for it, and we're going to keep badgering away at it.
Thank you. I'm going to move us on, recognising the time. Delivery pressure 4. Again, it's you, Councillor Bailey. It's the home to school transport costs. I'm going to ask, first of all, Councillor Watts to re-ask her question from earlier on, and then we got some others. But just as a foundation, how are you going to mitigate the increase in costs this year? How are you investigating other delivery options? And how are you going to hedge demand risk in 26-27? And I'll just ask Councillor Watts now to ask her question.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll do the short version, as I already asked it earlier. My apologies. Are we looking into a dedicated school transport bus for our out-of-borough students?
I can't give you an exact answer to that. I'll have to take guidance on that. I think I can recall discussions about this, and I think the buying one, the on-costs and employment of drivers ruled it out. But I'm not sure about that. I'll have to come back to you on that.
Do you
Thank you, Councillor.
Do you want to answer the broader questions around meeting increasing costs and demand, etc. this year?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Council has a statutory duty under the Education Act of 1996 and Department for Education guidance to provide suitable travel arrangements for eligible children of compulsory school age between 5 and 16 to attend their nearest appropriate school. Children qualify for free home-to-school transport if they attend a qualifying school and live beyond the statutory walking distance, which is over 2 miles if you're under 8, or over 3 miles between 8 and 16. The walking route is unsafe, or if the child has SEND, a disability or mobility issues making walking unreasonable, or families meet low income criteria, for example, free school meals or maximum working tax credit, under extended distance rules. Transport arrangements may include public transport passes, mileage allowances, or council contracted vehicles, e.g. taxis or minibuses, with passenger assistance for SEND pupils where required. Discretionary transport may be offered in exceptional cases. A total of 747 pupils are currently being transported to schools. The amount of budget committed to transporting children to schools is £300,944,939, with an average cost per pupil equating to £5,016.99. How am I mitigating the costs for that? We're implementing a range of measures to control rising home-to-school transport expenditure, particularly linked to out-of-borough placements. Key actions include increasing local SEND provision through projects such as the Hawthorne Academy, the SEMEH, Edgeborough and Sandhurst schools, which will reduce reliance on distant specialist settings and associated transport costs. The Council is also reviewing transport eligibility and routing to ensure efficiency, promoting shared transport arrangements where appropriate, and negotiating competitive rates with providers. Greater scrutiny of decision-making by officers for more complex cases, and the scheme of delegation will be reviewed, including the application of the policy potential changes in the policy could lead to a reduction in eligible students having bus passes issued due to parental preference to attend their designated school, not their nearest appropriate school. All home-to-school transport procedures are being updated to ensure that there is a clear process in place for handling additional requests to achieve economy and efficiency. Regular meetings between the finance team and service team are in place to ensure that there is a robust understanding of the current spend and to closely monitor any changes that increase or decrease costs. Potential uses of technology are also being explored to support effective route planning. And how am I going to look at investigating other delivery options? Following an audit of the service, a corporate improvement project team has been set up to review and address all identified issues, including robust monitoring and management of the costs. The team is working to deliver a detailed plan with regular monitoring meetings in place. Data analysis undertaken by the project team will include child-level analysis of eligibility for transport, analysis of the different modes of transport provided, and the analysis of all commissioned routes in order to identify efficiencies. Finally, how am I looking at hedging demand risks for the year 26-27? An annual review of education, transport and post-16 transport policies is currently underway and will consider proposed revisions to both policies by aligning transport eligibility more closely with statutory guidance, particularly the requirement to consider the nearest suitable school within statutory walking distance. The Council aims to ensure a more equitable and consistent approach to the provision of education transport across the borough. Other key areas under consideration include the post-16 parental contribution, the mileage reimbursement rate, and the introduction of personnel travel budgets. Collectively, these potential changes are also intended to help address the ongoing budget overspend within the education transport service. Over the next 12 months, the commissioning team will undertake a comprehensive procurement programme to secure approximately 120 education transport routes over a 5 to 8 year term. These services will support both mainstream and special educational needs settings, ensuring the safe and reliable transport of eligible children and young people to and from their educational establishments. The required procurement activity will be detailed in a full strategic procurement plan, which will set out proposals for development of a new education transport framework and identify potential route optimisation opportunities to help reduce the current budget overspend. We're pleased to know I've come to the end of that, but a lot of work is going on, is rigorous, focused and determined. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Barnard, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So for that comprehensive answer. So I guess this is an observation and then a question. I think the observation is it might be justifiable, but if you follow through with those home-to-school transport plans, there will be a reduction in service for some in the borough. It's inevitable if you change eligibility criteria, so that is actually, potentially reduction in service delivery. My question is, home-to-school transport is very difficult at the child level, and I want to try and bring this back to the child and young person at the heart of this. You might be able to design and plan bus routes and collective and collaborative transport plans, but we know that particularly for a lot of the children in very specialist school placements, that actually being in a transport mode or with other children can be problematic. So it's not just a logistical issue, it's actually ensuring that those children are catered for. And that brings us right back to the Bucklers Park School, because of course if you have children with high need, high autism needs and things like that, you're unlikely to be able to put them in a transport setting alongside another child. So how are we actually taking that in the round to make sure that in all these changes we still recognise that for many children to get them to their place of education, their school, requires fairly specialist transport, and every time you put a child in a taxi you need an escort as well to go alongside and all the other things that go with that? Because I worry, I see this in other councils where we have these comprehensive plans for change and things like that, but it seems to lose sight of actually the needs of the individual children that can then impact on their ability to get the best out of the setting that they're placed with.
I'm confident, as I say this, that all those things will be certainly taken into account. I just also want to add that the rules and protocols are there for a purpose, to guide us, to influence us, but we also need to demonstrate flexibility because there will be special cases, and I've come across them, that maybe don't fit the criteria, but we have to make that special effort to accommodate them. And that's very much in my mind in the discussions I have with the director. Thank you.
So I'm just going to start to bring this to a conclusion. Really, it's the chance that for any questions that haven't been asked. But overall, this is looking at the overall financial sustainability of this budget. So really for you, Councillor Bidwell, you are content that this budget gives the financial stability for this that this borough needs for 26-27, and that you are confident that it delivers the services to the standard required, and that it's a fair deal for residents. That's the very, sign the budget off question. And then really, there's just a bit of an elephant in the room, and Stuart has already talked about it, which is the exceptional financial support. Do you think that this budget gives us the foundations that if we are forced to go down that route, that we would be in the best possible preparedness, have the best possible preparedness for that?
Well, I said it was going to be challenging. Councillor Barnard said difficult. I think that's probably a more accurate way of being able to explain or be able to summarise where we are and where we have to get to. I'm confident that we've done what we need to do to get the 26-27 budget signed off and be able to still deliver the services that our residents deserve and expect. As far as EFS is concerned, I'm very hopeful that some of the initiatives that we've got in train, some of the consultations we've got in train, the transformational programme that we need to enact will be able to give us more of a handle on how to be able to put things in place to avoid EFS. And I have every confidence as a local authority that we can do that. It won't be easy. There's a lot of other things that have got to happen before the end of next financial year to ensure that we're in a good place, but I'm confident that we can do that.
Thank you. Last chance to question our guests with a sharp, focused, last chance question. Councillor Barnard.
I will try and be brief, Chair. Put simply, I understand requests have gone out to parish councils to provide support for town centre events in Bracknell Forest. How do you, Councillor Bidwell, square with this, with the need to make sure that what is still a vibrant town centre is well supported? Surely that should be a borough priority to make sure that those events which underpin the success of Bracknell Town Centre are funded, given that that is not the only request made of parish and town councils, who are already picking up and doing an exceptional amount of work on what are very, very limited precepts.
Yeah, we are in a difficult place. We are supporting them, but not as much as we could in the past, because we have to make difficult decisions about how we can allocate money for cultural and town centre events. We will look at each individual case. There are some events which we can support. We can't support as much as we did in the past. A lot of the funding that we got from the UK Prosperity Fund, that ends at the end of this financial year, was used for that purpose. We don't have that, so we need to ask the parishes to help us support those events.
Councillor Eggleston, you had your hand up. It's come down again. You still got a question?
Yeah, I had a question for Councillor Bailey. Just a very quick one. What he was saying about the bus passes for young people going off to send the schools. What conversations then have been had with the bus companies for children that are in buggies, disabled buggies, not wheelchairs? And also the fact that Councillor Barnard mentioned it as well, over the fact that these young people do have trouble in crowded environments, particularly where it's loud and bustling and they might be brushed past. So would it be discussions with the school as well about different start times to mitigate anything through that? I mean, if only we had a school that over 100 children could just go to in one place, that would be so much easier for our pupils and everyone else.
Thank you. If Councillor Eggleston will allow me, I can't give an answer now, but I will get back tomorrow with a full update on that.
Thank you.
So the last question, Councillor Tina Mackenzie-Boyle.
Thank you, sir. And I have to say it's entirely your fault. You did say you will read your document, and I did, every page. So there are enormous questions I still have. What are you going to do, Councillor Bidwell, please, to save our jewel in the crown, South Hill Park?
Well, we increased funding last budget. We will continue to support it as a council. We accept that it is a jewel in the crown, and we will continue to do everything we can to ensure that it goes on in the same way. Have you got a specific reason why you asked that question?
Yeah, I'm just looking at page 67 report, and it says here that negotiate a 10% reduction, 28-29 for South Hill Park. Unhappy, sir.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but we have started those discussions. It's not concluded, but you know, where we find ourselves as a local authority, we need to get the help of other bodies that we give money to at the moment.
What depresses me, therefore, sir, that if we don't support it, you will have, this local authority will have a huge building that it will have to maintain, and that's more money rather than supporting the
well,
South
we're
Hill
only
Park.
asking for a slight reduction in the grant, that's all.
Okay, so thank you very much to Cabinet members. We're going to move into debate, and then once we've had the debate and the recommendations, I will have a quick 10-minute recess before I allow Councillor Bidwell to reset and go again. So just from a chairman's perspective, just reminding ourselves what we've heard tonight, and so that we as a commission can make some meaningful recommendations to help in the situation we find ourselves. So we have had a pretty awful settlement, whether you want to use any other descriptor, but that's where I am. We are relying on our reserves in order to bridge that gap. It is clear that we are going to have a 4.99% increase. We have moved to a community-based solution for some services, and we have got the spectre of increased financial stress over the next few years based on the fair funding review that we got. You can see that with the £10 million in, I think it was 27-28. So there's an awful lot of pressures on services and the stability of this council. So to start with, I offer a perspective of how we as a commission can support this. There are a number of lead and lag indicators that I have introduced earlier on, which try to help understand the financial stability of this council. And these include such things as number of out-of-borough placements, costs around transport, and so forth. So areas that we can be constructively reported back on in order to understand the stress delivery risk to the council. So that's the starter for debate. So I ask you all to contribute in this conversation. You've all got a lived experience in this borough, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts so we can come up with some recommendations. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you very much, Chair. And can I first of all thank the Cabinet members and Stuart and Ronnie for everyone tonight for the presentation, because my emotions and thoughts at the moment in two places. One is we have a council, both at office and member level, who are doing their very best to actually try and work things through. But at the heart of this is the fact that our borough's demographics have not been recognised in the fair funding formula, that we have sub-ward levels of deprivation, we have significant issues that this very unfair funding model actually exacerbates. And so therefore, firstly, my comments are directed to say that, of course, as a commission, we need to work hard to do the very best we can. But I have a fundamental concern that given that we have things like increasing concerns being raised about littering in the general built environment in Bracknell Forest, given the fact that maintaining the vibrancy of our town centre are key and important, given some of the other pressures that we have in there, I struggle with some of the political priorities that have been established for the years ahead, when the government has sent a very, very clear and focused message to Bracknell Forest. They want us only to focus on those things which they think that really matter. Otherwise, why would they have cut so much money from us? And as a small authority, we do have a reputation for delivering high quality services, and we have historically got a reputation of working hard in these areas and doing well. But I worry about the shift to a community warrior model. I worry about the risks that that brings in. I worry about the demographic risks. I mean, if you look at the macroeconomic situation, I now move into the sort of the more government-focused thing. We have a fairly weak economy at the moment, relative to where we need to be in terms of growth. We see impacts on unemployment, as I mentioned earlier. We see changes to business rates, employment costs, but more than anything, we see uncertainty at the moment. Only this week we've seen yet another change in terms of an aspect of government policy around business rates and things like that. And if you talk to business, if you talk to people, it's often uncertainty that generates that. So where I am in this is, I would like to ask that the Cabinet look once again at some of the priorities they've set in the budget going forward. I mean, are we really reduced as a borough, as I kind of found out this morning, to actually saying that in the past where we've actually used something, like sort of reclaimed metal from I think this really matters, reclaimed metal from the crematorium to go towards supporting a bereavement charity. That circle in terms of, our residents, to think that now actually we've got to the point where we have to commercialise that. Is that really what we're reduced to? Is there not anything else we can do to maintain that link and that honour and things like that? So I would ask that be looked at again in great detail. Yes, it is important, of course, and I'll be brief, it is important, of course, that we continue to support measures to actually combat climate change and things like that. But in a budget where we're actually cutting support for businesses and things in the town centre, when we're actually changing things and ultimately hitting South Hill Park down the line, can we not look even more radically at delivery models there and say, this is key and core to everybody, that we actually, in the same way that we ask our residents to participate more in a community model delivery, that actually we can't afford to fund things centrally at that level. And finally, my observation here is we have great officers who are working hard here, but we know one of the consequences of this settlement is that there will be huge uncertainty amongst the people that work hard with passion for Bracknell Forest. We need to support them as councillors going through that process, because it's not going to be easy for anyone. And I will finish with one point, because at the end of the day, this is about political choices that a Labour government made. And I would like to take some of the councillors in this room back to the promise you campaigned on for the Labour Member of Parliament in 2024 for change for Bracknell Forest. It was everywhere, change for Bracknell Forest. When it really matters, what change for Bracknell Forest means in the context of the finances for this council is the sixth worst settlement in terms of English local government. Whichever way you cut it, whichever reassurance, whichever how much hard work is done by officers and members of this council, you can't disguise the fact that this government has shown it has very little time for and only things other than contempt for Bracknell Forest. We even have our special school delayed. So my hope and my ask is, let's focus on what really matters. Let's defend and support the services we do well, but recognise some of those nice-to-have things that we've got, we might just have to say goodbye to. And in doing so, it's not the fault of this council, it's not the fault of these officers or members, it's a decision that central government has made to strip us of the funding that we need to do the things that matter to our residents, that we like to see happen. And the only consequence of this is that our wonderful borough, our green borough, will look more shabby and will have less scope to do the things that has made it a wonderful place to live in. And that is not this council's fault. That is the fault of this Labour government.
So, just listening to obviously some of the things you've did, the recommendation is you're asking the cabinet to review the policy regarding metal from the crematorium. Okay.
And the second part of that is looking at a broader basket to say what really matters in some of those priorities. So, but the metal one is a key one.
Sorry, the second bit is quite vague.
But
the first bit
okay.
I can get. So let's just get that down first of all.
Let's get that down. I think linked to that is to say, in reviewing what monies you spend to get to that point, given the tightness, are there other things where maybe there needs to be a reprioritisation to make sure that we hit the things that matter? But fundamentally, for me, it's the crematorium and the metal.
Let's take the first one. Let's take the first. Right. So, would anyone else like to speak? Okay.
Just on that point.
Would you like to speak, Councillor Hafferty?
Not on that point.
You can any point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really concerned about the new finance proposals for the climate change side of things, and there's a potential we might lose services relating to that. I know we're aiming not to do that. So I guess I'd like to recommend that the relevant cabinet member ask officers to keep the Commission updated on the funding situation for the climate change team savings proposal, and to promptly inform us should shortfalls be likely to impact the provider service, resulting in changes or delays to the climate change action plans.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you. I think to summarise and perhaps bring a degree of brevity to Councillor Barnard's comment, and without putting words in his mouth, it isn't the point we want the Cabinet to restate its political priorities in the light of the, open inverted commas, fair funding, closing inverted commas, announcement. Because I think the point that Councillor Hafferty has made, the point that Councillor Barnard has made is this is all about political choices, and I think we need to steer from the Cabinet about what their political priorities are over the 3 years of this fair funding announcement, so that we as members understand how they're going to be approaching the hard decisions they're going to have to take.
Sorry, is that the case though, that just trying to bring some clarity to this? So the choices that the cabinet have made and the Labour group are articulated in a whole host of documents, so the plan that we have and so forth. So the question is to them is, has there been a change in those priorities? Because they set out climate change as the initial focus, the main focus, and I remember Councillor Temperton making that point on day one. So I think the question is, has the priorities changed? That's what we're asking, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So we have Councillor Penfold. Jenny, would you like to speak?
Oops. It's just concerning the metal from the crematorium. They may well send some of it to bereavement charities on their own bats, so to speak. But when I was mayor, most of that money came to, or a very large chunk of that came to the mayor's fund, which is used for charities who provide social services in Bracknell. So it would be a shame if it was diverted straight into the other budget. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Watts, I do believe. Jodie.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to suggest that we recommend that we continue to lobby for our special needs school and to help Councillor Barnard continue to lobby our MP and central government for the money that they, obviously previous government promised, because I'm sure if they dig deep, they could find it. What they're suggesting is another CRP, special needs unit, which we don't need. We need a school. And in relation to what Councillor Barnard was saying, I do believe that overall this commission is relatively unbiased and has no one particular leaning towards one party or another. And I think it should remain that way no matter who's in government. Thank you.
Okay, so the recommendation that I started with, I'm trying to bring this all together, is that in order to enable us as a commission to ensure that there is a clear indication of the health of this council, financial health, that a list of lead and lag indicators around the delivery pressures that we saw is created.
Second that.
Okay. The second one was the Councillor Barnard one around the Cabinet reviewing the choice around scrap metal in the crematorium. Recovered metal, sorry. I'm just trying to get the words right. Recovered metal, right. That's the second one. The third one was Councillor McLean, what was yours?
About, well, you summarised it by saying, you mean this one?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Yes, I may be a lone voice, but I really do feel that we need to raise our sights above the current financial predicament for Bracknell Forest Borough Council, important though that is to get it right, to collaborate with other local authorities to try and apply pressure to the government to fulfil their commitment to devolution by devolving more of the money they allocate to local authorities down to local authorities to allow us to decide where the money should be spent and how it's divided up. And if you're having a strategic combined authority with a mayor, which is clearly what you want, then the government needs to put its money where its mouth is and give that mayor and those combined authorities more of a bigger slice of the cake rather than somebody in Whitehall deciding. Now, I'm trying to think of a way of cutting those words down, but I think we want the Cabinet to try and apply pressure to local government, to central government, to ensure more decisions about the allocation of local government finance is made locally.
So that's for the Cabinet to lobby central government for a further devolution of funding to local authorities as their best place to make decisions. Right. Any more? Is that it? Oh, sorry. Councillor Watts? Jodie?
Just to say that were I in the room, I would second Councillor McLean's proposal.
I think it's important we support that round delivery for climate change. Not that there will necessarily be funding available, but I think it's important there's transparency on the impact the financial settlement has on delivering this again, as part of that broader thing.
Okay, let's do vote on the first, going through them. So, okay, I'll ask that question. It's a fair shout. So the first recommendation was to get a lead and lag set of lead and lag indicators relating to the delivery pressures that we've gone through tonight. Any dissent? Okay, well, we're good with that one. The second one was the recovered metals. Is there asking the Cabinet to review that decision? Is there any dissent on that question? Huh? If we got a seconder for that one, Councillor Webb. Happy with that one. The third one was the Councillor McLean one around lobbying central government around further devolution of funding. Any okay. Councillor Preston will second that. Okay, we're going to vote on those as a package. Oh, sorry, Adrian. Sorry, Adrian. Can you just go back what that one was?
Okay, I'd like to recommend that the relevant thank you. That the relevant cabinet member asks officers to keep the Commission updated on the funding situation for the climate change team's savings proposal and to promptly inform us should shortfalls be likely to impact the provided service, resulting in changes or delays to the climate change action plans.
Okay. Councillor Barnard seconded that one. So I ask you now. Yes, Councillor Barnard seconded that one, first one. Before anyone else, I even finished it, he seconded it. Right. Okay, yep, thank you very much. So, votes for those recommendations, votes for? It's unanimous, thank you very much. And at that point, I'm going to adjourn for 10 minutes. So those who have been sat here for 2 hours can quickly grab some air. Be back here at 20:47 hours. Councillor Bidwell is on an important mission. He's back, is he? Okay.
He's behind you.
Okay, he's back from his mission. So we're going to go on to agenda item 7. Thank you. We're now live. We have a cabinet member update from Councillor Bidwell on his portfolio, economic development and regeneration. Welcome again.
Thank you.
You're going to give us a presentation of performance within the council plan overview report related to your portfolio.
I'll try and keep it brief. I'll run through it. You've all seen a copy of the presentation, so I'm hoping that you can just come back with questions. So next slide, please. The first part of and the next slide, please. Whoops. So this is really just a high-level achievements of the property part of my portfolio. The most interesting element to this, as far as I'm concerned, is the launch of the asset management strategy. There was a little bit of conversation earlier around the budget about how important this is, and I'm looking forward to it. The rest of this slide really highlights what we've achieved and some of the accomplishments, and you can see there's a lot of work going on in the properties that we manage, and some of the highlights which will come, some of the decisions that you'll be seeing coming forward will be mainly in the way of how we maintain and contractors that we employ to keep our properties to the standard that we would expect for our residents. Next slide, please. Communication and marketing. I'm not sure my comments on this would go down very well with some members of this committee, but I'm absolutely delighted that we were able to change the name and rebrand the magazine from Town and Country, or whatever it was called, to Your Bracknell Forest. I think that is more representative of what we need this to do. You may have seen some of the videos that we've put out. I'm glad to say that I haven't been involved in TikTok quite yet, but we will be doing some work going through this next coming year as we see that being a better way to engage the youth of our borough. That's what they use. I've been reliably told that probably most of the people in this room are the people that stick to Facebook and not TikTok or any of the new channels. More than 1,000 documents designed as part of our promise to try and give as much communication, much material to our residents as possible. Next slide, please. Communications. Our communications team is incredibly busy. You can see some of the reactive media inquiries we've responded to. We've launched a new pages for Send. We've also, which is linked later to some of the business, the economic strategy, we've launched a new business website, and we have also kept a really, hopefully you'll agree, a really good tight watch on some of the Afghan resettlement program communications, which that was really, really important. There's so much misinformation, and it's important that we keep this message going over and over again about what that is, and it's not taking away services from our residents, which is one of the main themes that we've been getting through social media. So really, hats off to our communications officers. They've done a fabulous job. Next slide, please. Although we're having to revisit some of the support for some of the community town centre events, we have achieved quite a lot in 2025, and we will continue to support as much as we can, bearing in mind that there are some events that we may have to get some support, added support from town council. Next slide, please. Economic strategy. We do have a strategy. You know about the strategy. The thing that I like about our strategy is that we promise to have ongoing updates. Those updates are on the website, and you can see how we are performing against that. Compared to our neighbours, growth is no worse, slightly better than some. Unfortunately, getting a handle on where we are today is difficult because a lot of our data comes from the ONS, and that is a little bit of a lag. And I can assure you that I've been a real thorn in the officer's side trying to find ways to be able to make that data a little bit more available, whether there's a way that we can get a more local view of what's happening in the economy. And we have got some ways of doing that. We know how many new businesses there have been, and it is going up slowly. We know that there are new shops opening in the lexicon. We are aware of that. We keep an eye on that, and that is a measure of how well the economic strategy and the economic development is going within the borough. Next slide, please. One of the things I would like to continue to do more of is understanding the need of businesses. We can't, unfortunately, attract funding from any local governments, central government sources to be able to attract businesses. But when I go around and meet with businesses, you can see this is a flavour of some of the businesses that I've met with. One of the first questions I ask is, why are you here, and who are your suppliers, and why aren't they there? It's like, they here. And in particular, I was delighted to talk to a local organisation that is involved in not restoration, but recovery of materials that have been damaged by fire or water. And one of the needs, or one of the key deliverers of services to this organisation, that biggest customer is one of the actuaries that provide insurances for churches and the like. They needed somebody to recover documents affected by water. So we did try, because the nearest place, or the nearest resource for that, was in London, and we said, well, why can't we bring them to Bracknell? So the officers did try to engage with them to get them to come here. It hasn't happened yet, but that's the sort of thing that we're trying to do, is to find out why suppliers aren't here and what we can do to help facilitate them arriving into Bracknell. Business support initiatives. We've certainly, when we had the UK Prosperity Fund, we were able to do more of that. But one of the highlights was not just in the town centre, but cognizant of the fact that Bracknell Forest included Crowthorne and Sandhurst. We were very keen to support and engage with local banks to get a cash hub in Crowthorne High Street, and that was a big success. And I'm delighted that we continue to be able to do that where we can in the rest of the borough. Next slide, please. This is a flavour of some of the other initiatives that we're supporting. The Bracknell bid job fair in the lexicon was very, very well supported, and we want to do more and more of that, and really try and be the link to potential employment opportunities outside of the borough, but using people, allowing Bracknell residents to have access to that. So one of the ones that springs to mind is the Bracknell Film Office, where we have a huge film studios on our doorstep. It's not actually in the forest, but if we can engage with them and get people the opportunity to work in those sort of industries. The Berkshire Growth Hub has been around for a while, and we will continue again to support that. The latest initiative is that we are being able to provide sorry, I lost my train of thought there. We're working with addition to this, we're working with partnerships like the Local Innovation Fund, which is a Berkshire-wide thing, to be able to, again, establish growth across Berkshire. Why Berkshire? Because Berkshire is a bigger marketplace, and we can play our part in opening up the gateway to Berkshire for Bracknell businesses and residents. The Skills Hub has been very successful. We've learned a lot from it. We've been able to implement 2 or 3 programs with apprenticeship programs with local companies. Sadly, the funding for that is from the UK Prosperity Fund, and it comes to an end at the end of the financial year. But we will be looking to maybe do other things like the Local Initiative Fund, Connect Berkshire. We've already started talking to, we've given the contract to Palladium, who will be able to help with that. Youth employment started this week, which is a specific initiative to be able to get 18 to 24-year-olds that are currently on universal credit, referred by the DWP. That will be launched officially in February, so we're having great expectations about that. So going back to the Skills Hub, next slide, please. As I mentioned, we already had bespoke training for specific skills gaps, but we've engaged with 130 businesses. You can read the slide here. Sadly, this will come to an end, but you can see that what we've learned from this is that there is an amazing appetite for us to be able to be a facilitator for businesses, job seekers and trainers. And we hope to continue to do something around that, even if it's around the Berkshire Hub. I mentioned Get Berkshire Working, Connect to Work. That starts in February. And the Youth Employment Hub, which I've already spoken about. The Bracknell Economic Partnership, I attended the meeting in 2025 in January, April, July, August. Supported procurement working group on plan for a procurement webinar. Now, this partnership replaced something that we had before, and it's managed by businesses rather than agencies, so we can get the business take on how we can move the growth of Bracknell Forest forward. And that is that, I think. So, bit too quick, but I was very cognizant of time, but I'm sure there's be some questions which will...
Thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions. So obviously there have been a number of procurements this year, and prior to the new Procurement Act, we looked at the social value components that we want to have in our new contracts. I'll be interesting to know what sort of benefits to the community we'll see via the social value component of those new contracts that you've brought in. You have to forgive me. I come from a technology background. Within our economic strategy, what's our early thinking about how we can attract technology companies, particularly AI, recognise the Thames Valley heritage and some of the larger companies that we've had here who are provide services such as that, and finally, our work with higher education agencies, authorities and bodies in order to develop the economic resilience within our borough. Have you any thoughts around that as well?
Yeah, start with the last one first. We have been speaking with Reading University and Holloway University about having a pull through there so that we can maybe link that up with our own Bracknell College and have an understanding of what their need is and what we can best do to try and facilitate that. What we'd ideally like to do is to be able to have almost a college to education, to higher education, to university back to employment within Bracknell. So companies like Syngenta can maybe feed us what they need, and we can then be the facilitator to other universities.
Social value one, really interested in how that's...
So the social value, we didn't have a social value policy up until last year. That's now in place. The social value policy demands that we get from any contract that we procure an idea of what they are going to give us for to our residents in social values. So what we need to do, I haven't got the answer on the top of my head, but what we need to do is provide this body with a list of what we think value has been added through our contracts to date.
Brilliant. Councillor Tina Mackenzie-Boyle.
Thank you very much. Going back to social value, Crowthorne Parish, we got quite a bit of money out of Legal and General through social contract for our high street. I won't go on to the stress testing of the lampposts, that's another point.
Thank you.
But however, when you were talking before, and all I heard was Bracknell Forest, sir, please.
Yeah.
And then you said, Crowthorne and Sandhurst, I'm keen to support them. I would hope you would also support Warfield and Binfield.
Of course.
It's not Bracknell town-centric. We are a conglomerate. We are Bracknell Forest. And I wrote down here, yes, we are Bracknell Forest. I think we ought to have that as our push. Yes, we are Bracknell Forest.
I thought I actually said, I realised that Bracknell Forest
At the end you said Bracknell Forest.
Sorry.
I take notes, you see, sir.
Councillor Eberle.
Okay, it works. Thanks, Councillor Bidwell. Maybe a slight curveball, but I couldn't fail to notice that Bracknell is one of the few communities which is now becoming still harder and harder to reach, at least by rail, because we're directly in the black hole between Ascot and Wokingham, aren't we? In the heady days pre-COVID, we had a rail service here every 15 minutes. And, these days are gone, but now that we are back to British Rail, great or otherwise, I think it would be worthwhile pushing for an improvement of the rail service, which is really problematic, especially if you're traveling late at night in winter, you miss a train, then you're stranded on a platform for half an hour. Not fun. I can assure you that. I'm going with that for 15 years now. It's horrible. So my recommendation or suggestion could be maybe lobby with the appropriate authorities to reinstate the rail service as it was before. Thank you.
Well, clearly it's not in my gift to reinstate the rail service as it was before. I have, up until recently, been a regular user of the awful line that is Bracknell to Waterloo. I think it's absurd that they advertise on-board internet. If there are any complaints that we would wish to raise about late service, but have you ever tried using the internet to raise a complaint? It doesn't work. So it's appalling. I have talked to a number of people about not just the train service, but also about the internet provision whilst travelling there. And it's freely available. If you look on the internet on the coverage between or 5G coverage around our area, it's pretty good, except the train service all the way up until you get to Richmond, and then you suddenly get a 5G service. I will take that on board and try and lobby. I can't do any more than that. I am linked into their customer service pages, so that I do get emails from them asking my feedback on the rail service, which I think is important.
I just believe it would add to the attractiveness of Bracknell Forest as a place of work.
Yes, it would. There's a number of aspects to that. I have talked about why very quickly after the rush hour, the train service, the number of carriages go down to 8 instead of 10. Sometimes even during the rush hour, it's less than 10. I've been on one of those as well. It's awful. It's awful. And the explanation I was given was the trains are available, but they can't get them commissioned quickly enough. I'm not sure that's the truth. I keep on being told that the the new trains will be online soon.
Yeah, let's hope they are not coming online anytime soon, because the new seats in these trains are horrible. No, that's not the problem. But if you sit close to a lady which you don't know, you're really cozying up. That's totally inappropriate. I'm sitting with half my bum sticking into the
Too much
carriageway.
information, but I get what you're saying.
Well,
Thank you,
Just
Councillor Eberle. Councillor Barnard.
Thank you. Just on the train thing, one of the useless facts I know is that it takes longer to get to Waterloo now than it did in the era of steam trains, but there we go. But my question is, we talk a lot about sustainable living, sustainable business. We have Syngenta in the borough, champion of bioscience. Is there more that we should do on our economic strategy to basically create that sort of bioscience hub? Because notwithstanding the visit you made to 3M, they're reshaping their business, which might not necessarily mean the same level of technology in Bracknell Forest as they historically had. And it strikes me that with the move towards algal-based products, plastic polymer replacement and things like that, and to ensure that we maintain and bring high-tech jobs, high-value jobs to Bracknell Forest, is this not an initiative that we should explore? Because it's an example. It's an example of.
I'm just going to refine this because this is a good idea.
Yeah, just make use.
This is a good.
He wants that in right.
I'm going to get. He wants it. So to be really clear, what we're saying is there are some world-leading organisations in our borough. We should probably have a specific economic strategy for that.
Looking at sort of bioscience and the impact it can have. So that's a huge growth area.
So identifying key areas like bioscience and others, and having targeted individual strategies for both the category and the organisation. Is that where we're going?
And potentially bring sort of university style facilities to the borough to support.
Well, they can be one of the targets. Okay. I'm just going to... So when we get to the end, we know what we're talking about. Okay, cool. Councillor McLean.
Do you want me to respond to that? Yeah. Okay. So the Bracknell Forest Enterprise Partnership is doing exactly that. There are a number of work streams within that group, and one of those is to identify key areas and what we can do to engage them more thoroughly within Bracknell Forest. Yeah.
Is it okay? All right. We're going to just thinking about ahead. What did you? Sorry, what was it? What was the exact title?
Bracknell Forest Enterprise Partnership.
So, actually, let's do going forward potentially a deep dive on that and see if we can improve it to recognising some potential benefits that we can see as a commission.
Yeah, more than happy to do that.
Sorry, Robert.
Thank you. I have two questions. The first one, I can't let this pass without saying 64 minutes is the journey time from Bracknell to London Waterloo. As Councillor Barnard has said, that is actually slower than when we had operating steam trains along those lines. We're in competition with Maidenhead, we're in competition with Reading, who benefit from the Elizabeth line, where you can get into London Waterloo in less than an hour. I can't begin to tell you how important it is for us to have the infrastructure for our residents and business to make sure Bracknell retains a place to set up your business and employ people. It really, really is very important. I won't go on about dwell times and all that sort of thing, because that's only if you're really, really ready for me to bore you witless about it. But that is a key part strategically for Bracknell Forest. My two questions are this. At the beginning, you highlighted some of your achievements with regard to property and other things. What's not gone well since May 2023, and how will you use that experience to help you inform decision-making that you're taking in the future? That's the first question. The second question is, what was my second question? Yes, what meetings have you had or are you planning to have with the new owners of the Lexicon?
I'll take the last question first. As you know, the Lexington has just been bought by, I've forgotten the name, Realty Income. Yeah, I remember the last bit. initial meetings with officers as an introduction will be happening in the next few weeks, and as soon as that has happened, I will then meet with them as well, so we can understand what their strategy is for the lexicon. Initial thoughts are that they want to be more involved, which is a good thing. We don't know what that means, so as soon as we have more information on that, then we can relay that to this group. Okay. The last question was, oh yeah. So first, what didn't work, and how does that change our strategy going forward?
Now, my question was, what hasn't worked quite so well, and how will your learning from that inform your future decisions?
Well, what hasn't worked quite so well is we still haven't been able to see any improvement in our MVQ achievement, and that is something that we need to understand why. Maybe outside of our control, but it's something that we can also maybe get a better strategy handle on through the BFEP, which is co-hosted by Activate Learning.
Last one.
Yes, a question triggered by the comments about meeting the new owners of the lexicon. Maybe Councillor Bidwell might like to reflect on the message that's sent if you're disinvesting from supporting events in the town centre when you're going to meet the new owners of the town centre who want to be more involved, and presumably you want to demonstrate that the council's more involved. Just saying.
Ahead of you. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, we're going to thank you very much, Councillor Bidwell. I release you from that chair. No. So thank you very much for your long stint tonight. It is most appreciated. So let's move into debate. Now, we've already created some recommendations. Let's try and get them out. So the first one was that we as a commission would be very interested to have a report on the social value component that our procurements have our procurement commitments have made, and how effective they've been, and potentially on a quarterly or half cycle. Yeah, I think that's the first one. The second one is just to remind ourselves that we are Bracknell Forest. Oh. It's not a record. It's not. We are not debating it. I just. The point has been made. The third one was regarding a recommendation that the Cabinet lobby appropriate stakeholders regarding improving the rail connection from Bracknell to London, in particular. The fourth one.
Feedback on meeting with the lexicon.
Yes, your next meeting, you give us feedback on the meeting that you've had with the new lexicon owners.
And there was another one, which of course was using the enterprise, whatever it is, to explore, growth areas for the economy terms of, bioscience and other types of things like that. Yeah, Bracknell Forest Enterprise, not Bracknell Enterprise Partnership, Bracknell Forest Enterprise Partnership, and exploring
Bracknell Forest Enterprise Partnership,
economic partnership, and exploring, potential growth areas, around bioscience and things that are linked to existing.
We would like to do we'd like to do a deep dive on it. Yes, as a commission. Okay, right. We've gone through those. I asked the commission members: are there any of those top recommendations that people feel uncomfortable with now? Okay, bundling them all together. Do I need to do? Okay. All of them, or one at a time? Okay. So the first one was social value. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Robert is a seconder. The second one was lobbying to improve the connection. It was Councillor Ebele and Councillor Webb. The third one was the partnership. Deep dive on the partnership, Councillor Barnard and Councillor Hafferty. Sorry, I'm running out of mouth. I'm desperately running out of mouth. So with that, votes for? Okay, unanimous. And with that, Thank you very much. That's agenda item 7. Thank you very much, Councillor Bidwell. Let's quickly move on to agenda item 8, which is work programme updates. I will. Do you want me to do the environment and communities one from the session on Tuesday?
Yes, please. I defer to you.
So we ran the last module for the environment and communities panel with ABRI as the major registered provider of social and affordable housing on Tuesday. We got an awful lot out of it, and we are now moving to the production of the report. We've started drafting recommendations in a particular smart manner. I recommend it to you all, and so we should be on track to deliver the report probably as we go into February, but we're not far off track. So that's that one. The Education, Skills and Growth panel, Councillor Watts. Where are we on that one? Is she still here? She is. Jodie?
She is, sir. Yes, the panel has had their final meeting with the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in December, and we've drafted recommendations. The draft report has now been put together, I'm very pleased to announce, and is now going through the governance process before being presented to this Commission in February. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. And the Health and Care panel, Jerry?
Make sure I'm on. Okay, so we had our first meeting of the year last evening, and we elected a new chair and vice chair. We also received 2 presentations. It was an update from the Cabinet Member for Adults and Public Health on progress with the sexual health contract procurement, and the second presentation was an update from the Director of Public Health on smoking, vaping and wider tobacco control work, including action being taken by public protection teams against retailers found selling vapes to underage individuals. We don't know when the next meeting of the JHOSC will be, but it will either be in February or March. And when I know the date, I will update the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. There's an awful, just on this one, Jerry, there's an awful lot of interest, of course, in Frimley Park, the JHOSC. And I noticed from a whole host of different stakeholders in Surrey Heath and in Surrey, as soon as you can perhaps give an update when the location is chosen, we'd be very keen, I think, to, as a commission, to speak to ICB Frimley or their successor afterwards.
Okay, I'll do that. When I get any information about the date of the meeting, I'll let you know. And if I get a chance about what's actually going to be discussed, if there's any questions that I can take from you to take to the meeting, I'll be happy to take them for you and update you. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Right. With that, I bring this meeting to an end. Are we offline?